Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Work webinar. We'll wait just another moment for more attendees to join us, and we'll begin shortly. Good morning, everyone. It's about 11:01, so I'm just going to start and kick things off so that we have plenty of time for our speaker as well as some Q&A. So good morning. My name is Michelle Quint, and I am the Executive Director of Human Resources for the Health Enterprise. And I'd like to welcome you all to our Future of Work webinar series. Today's webinar is Mindfulness-based intervention in your new normal. And I will serve as your MC for this session. This session is one of 6 topics that we are offering as we begin the transition back to on-site work and a hybrid work environment. All of these sessions are being recorded, so if you have colleagues who missed today's live session or other sessions, they are available on the Future of Work website, and those are going to be located, or the link to that will be located in the chat function. This is a webinar format, so while you can see our co-hosts and our speaker, we cannot see you. You'll notice a Q&A box versus a chat box, so feel free to submit your questions during the session, and we'll try to get to them, to as many of them as possible as time allows. So now to the main event. I'd first like to introduce Dr. Michael Stamos, our Dean of the School of Medicine at UCI. Dr. Stamos, I know that you have hosted these webinars before, but please tell us a little bit about your UCI experience and why this particular session is of interest to you.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everyone. It's great to be seen by you. Wish I could also see you, but not yet, right? So it's great to be here. I've been at UCI now. I'm actually on my 20th year. I just finished my 19th, if you would, anniversary, and in the Department of Surgery, and now eventually, as of 2016, in the Dean's office. So it's great to be here and great to have a chance to lead such a great organization. You know, the last year and a half has been incredibly stressful on many, many levels. Don't need to share that news to any of you. My wife has been a longtime practitioner of mindfulness, and early in the pandemic, I discovered the benefits of mindfulness and finally became enlightened. And really we're just thrilled with how it helped us, particularly in the early days of the pandemic, to really thrive in difficult times. And so I'm particularly excited about today's event and about today's topic, because it is meaningful to me personally, as well as to my family. So without any further ado, let me introduce our speaker, Dana Garfin. She's an assistant adjunct professor in the Sue and Bill Gross School of Nursing and the Program of Public Health in the Department of Health, Society, and Behavior here at UCI. She's a qualified mindfulness-based stress reduction instructor. She trained at the UC San Diego Center for Mindfulness. She has studied and taught meditation, yoga, and other mind-body modalities for nearly 2 decades. Her academic work explores how individual-level negative life events and collective trauma affect physical and mental health across the lifespan, and how community-based interventions like this one can alleviate resulting health disparities. Thank you very much, Dana, and welcome.
Great, thank you for that introduction. Okay. All right, thank you for that introduction. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the past 18 months have highlighted the critical relationship between stress and our physical and mental health. In the past week alone, if you turned on your television or checked the news apps on your phone, you were likely exposed to media coverage of the heartbreaking scenes from Kabul airport, the California wildfires, the tragedy of Hurricane Ida on the Gulf Coast, and the ubiquitous and seemingly endless coverage of COVID-19. Pausing for a moment to reflect on your experience of these events, you might recall, or perhaps even now be experiencing, feeling overwhelmed, sad, angry, indifferent, tired, anxious, depressed, or maybe a combination of these emotions. Perhaps you feel stress in your body through the experience of tension, upset stomach, or neck and back pain. Research shows that these initial responses are linked with both short and long-term negative effects on our health. And lastly, the effects of this media-based as well as direct exposure to such large-scale events, like I mentioned on the previous slide, can accumulate over time. So for the presentation today, first I'm going to present a small snapshot of some of the research that my colleagues and I at UCI have been doing on responses to stress and trauma. Then I'm going to provide an overview of how mindfulness can help downregulate the stress response and improve our physical and mental health. And then I'm going to conclude with some specific tips on how you might choose to incorporate mindfulness into your new normal. So important to understanding our experience of the new normal is the acknowledgement that exposure to stress occurs at multiple levels, often as a cascade of interrelated stress and trauma. Over the past decade, I've been working with colleagues here at the University of California, Irvine to understand how exposure to these collective trauma impact our physical and mental health. So by collective trauma, I mean large-scale negative events that impact the populace broadly and can be experienced both directly and through the media. Our research has found that increased exposure to such events, both directly and witnessing it through the media, portends more psychological distress over time. And then these large-scale events are overlain with the stressful and traumatic individual level events that occur in our daily lives, as well as chronic stressors. These recur both as a result of the larger societal events and the causes and conditions that occur in our own lives. So some research my colleagues and I are currently engaged in highlights this confluence of stressors and their impact on our mental health. So this slide presents data from a nationally representative sample of more than 6,500 Americans. So you can see here that COVID-19 related secondary stressors, such as lost job and canceled travel plans, as well as personal exposures, such as you or someone you love being diagnosed with coronavirus, and media-based exposures were all associated with increased acute stress and depressive symptoms. So acute stress is an early form of a traumatic stress response, and that's in the light gray, and depressive symptoms are in the dark gray. And the asterisks above each bar indicate that we found statistical significance between the experience of those stressors and the acute stress and depressive symptoms. Work exposures were negatively correlated with distress, perhaps the result of people who were able to retain employment or work from home during the stay-at-home orders during the early phase of the outbreak, felt more in control or were not experiencing that same level of distress. Taken together, these findings highlight that stressors at each level of exposure can negatively impact our mental health. This graph highlights the specific relationship between COVID-19 related media exposure and traumatic stress responses depicted here as acute stress symptoms. Our team found similar findings regarding media exposure and negative responses to the Boston Marathon bombings, hurricanes, earthquakes, and the Ebola public health crisis. And I present this here to emphasize that what is happening at the societal level is a key player in how we are reacting and responding to the stress that we experience at the individual level, even if some of these events are somewhat removed from our daily lives. Yet these large-scale events are happening in the context of our individual lives. Adverse events are common, and they can include trauma such as abuse, assault, serious accident, or the suicide of a loved one. They can also include stressful events such as divorce, illness, economic hardship, and bereavement. So when we talk about an event that's traumatic, it's a very specific definition derived from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So to meet true criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, you need to have actually been at an event. So when we talk about media exposure, we're talking about post-traumatic stress symptoms rather than that diagnostic criteria. So kind of important to differentiate those two events, from a medical perspective. And unfortunately, nearly 94% of Americans will report exposure to at least one type of adverse experience, be it traumatic, stressful, or a combination of the two. And our research shows that the individual level negative life events that we experience, the more of them that we experience, the harder it is to cope with collective trauma. So this slide shows that data from a representative sample of Americans who we assessed shortly after the Boston Marathon bombings. The findings show that traumatic events that happened in childhood and adulthood, as well as recent trauma and recent stress, were associated with more post-traumatic stress following the Boston Marathon bombing. So the more of these events that you experienced earlier in your life or recently, the more of them that you experienced, the stronger your symptoms of post-traumatic stress were following this collective trauma. And again, the red stars above the bars indicate statistical significance. And so, I present these findings to demonstrate the interrelationship with what happens over the course of our lives at the individual level and our responses to these current stressors. Layered on top of that is the daily stress of work, family, societal commitments, social engagements, all of these which are now happening under the uncertainty and the stress of COVID-19, as well as the social upheaval that we have been witnessing. And all of these stressors occur in three realities concurrently. The reality that we're confronted with in real time in our direct experience of the moment. The reality of the past, something that happened to us previously in our lives, something we saw on the news, something a friend told us, and the reality of the future that hasn't even happened yet. So these are stories we make up in our mind, perhaps something we see on the news, something that a friend tells us, our own worries and fears and catastrophizing. So we're experiencing all these realities at the same time. For each of these real or perceived stressors, whether it be in the past, present, or future, at the individual or societal level, our brain and our body react the same. When we perceive a stressor, the body mobilizes to deal with it via the fight or flight response. And this can be thought of as the body's gas pedal. We have activation of the sympathetic nervous system. This includes increased flow of blood to skeletal muscles, increased heart rate, blood pressure, and opening of airways. People's pupils dilate and their eyes adjust. Repair processes are inhibited. And there's a release of epinephrine and norepinephrine, which they're chemicals in our body that ready us to deal with the demands of the stressor. We may also have emotional changes such as negative affect, distress, fear, anger, sadness, and other cognitive reactions, thoughts, which can serve to amplify these processes. So we're dealing with the event as well as all our thoughts, feelings, and emotions to that event, which we've all experienced can sort of amplify that process. As a result, no matter how we experience stress, it can set off a cascade of emotional, physical, cognitive, and psychological processes. And while many of these processes develop for our survival when avoiding predators or dealing with the immediate threats to our physical well-being, these resources are still critical even in the modern era. So when we talk about mindfulness or the downregulation of the sympathetic nervous system, we don't want to check out and just completely take a break. We want to feel enough anxiety about COVID-19 that we remember to wear a mask when we're asked to, and be motivated enough to get the vaccine. However, as this diagram shows, most of this is happening automatically. We perceive a stressor, be it internal, external, individual, or collective, and the fight or flight response is activated. We have this cascade of physical sensations, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and we react accordingly. But most of these reactions are done out of habit without much forethought. And this can lead to maladaptive coping, overeating, overdrinking, being short-tempered with friends or loved ones, even avoiding the problem altogether. So again, these are not always helpful reactions. And in fact, often, as we've all experienced, they could make the problem worse. Most of the time, these processes are happening automatically. We're not in control of our reactions, even if we want to be. We've all had the experience of wanting to make a different choice in a situation and seemingly not being able to. The gas pedal has been activated. And by the time you realize what's happening, you're too deep in the activity that there's so much momentum, it seems impossible to stop. So this is what's called reacting, and it's done mostly out of habit. We can do our best to create the conditions for a lower stress life. We can leave early to avoid traffic, take all the necessary precautions against COVID-19, and save money for a rainy day. But inherently, life is going to be forever out of our control, and we won't be able to prepare for everything. Mindfulness-based interventions can help break the stress reactivity cycle. So John Kabat-Zinn, who is a premier researcher of the benefits of mindfulness for our physical and mental health, defines mindfulness as paying attention on purpose to the present moment non-judgmentally. So this sounds simple, but we often do not do this. We react, we judge, we ignore, we dislike, and we measure our experience against our expectation of how things are supposed to be. We react to ourselves and to others with a stream of criticism and commentary. This is part of the cognitive process that can amplify the stress response, whether that stress is right in front of our face or something we are remembering or catastrophizing in our mind. Mindfulness can help us respond rather than react out of our habitual patterns. So what does this mean? It means that we have a chance to make a different choice about how to cope with a situation. This helps us down-regulate the stress response, even during times of great difficulty. This does not always mean that the situation changes. And one thing that I think is very important to highlight when we talk about mindfulness, so this isn't a way of just seeing things differently so that everything is perfect. This is seeing things as they are. And this allows us to authentically engage with the demands of the moment as well as our reactions to them. And through that clarity, we are able to make choices that can benefit our physical and mental health, as well as the physical and mental health of those around us. All right, so we're going to do a very short practice. I know I can't see everybody's face, so I'm just going to kind of invite you. It's only going to be a few minutes. So it's just going to be a little experience so that when on the next few slides, we just have a little bit of a real world experience to draw from. So this is going to be an awareness of emotion meditation. So if you're comfortable, you can join me in the practice, or you could just listen. So if you're comfortable, I'm gonna invite you to sit in your chair. If you're standing, you can continue standing. And I'm just gonna invite you to connect with the experience of your body in this moment, exactly how it is. Maybe you feel your feet on the ground, the bottom of your feet touching the carpet or your socks or your shoes. Perhaps you feel the bottom connected to the chair, your hands in your lap or on the desk. You may invite the eyes to close and invite the attention to the breath, exactly as it is in this moment. There's no need to breathe faster or slower. Simply bring your awareness to your breath in this moment, exactly how it is. You may notice the sensation of air as it enters the body, expands the lungs and the stomach, and then journeys out of the body. Perhaps you can notice the in-breath. And when it changes into the out-breath, perhaps you can bring your attention to the out-breath as it changes to the in-breath. Perhaps your mind has already wandered to somewhere far from this webinar, thinking about things you have to do later, remembering something from this morning, worrying, daydreaming. These are all potential experiences. Simply note that experience and invite the attention back to the breath. And then begin to scan the body or the mind for an experience of any emotion. Perhaps you feel anxiety of the work you need to get done. Perhaps you feel bored or sleepy or tired. Perhaps sadness arises. So whatever of these emotions you notice, invite the attention to that space. Perhaps labeling it, anger arising, experiencing anxiety. And then as you bring your attention to this emotion, notice if there is a change. Perhaps it becomes softer or more intense or less intense. Perhaps the mind has drifted far away from the emotion in just this short matter of time we've been focusing on it. Welcoming all of these experiences as part of the practice of mindfulness. All right, so you can kind of turn your attention back to the breath, open your eyes, kind of come back to the webinar if you've been doing the practice. And for people who have been doing the practice, just kind of open your eyes. I'm just going to give you a short minute to kind of reflect on that experience and what it might have been like for you. So obviously that was a very short meditation, but often even a short meditation, people may feel an experience of feeling more calm. Sometimes you might experience more anxiety or an activation of the stress process. Perhaps it's already been activated, but you're just now aware of it. So why do this during a webinar on wellness in the workplace? Well, often simply noticing the experience of stress or emotion in the body and mind can reduce its negative impact on you. So, for example, if you're feeling super agitated when you're engaging with a superior or a colleague, simply taking a step back and noticing that experience of anger, irritation, or frustration can allow you to make a different choice moving forward, right? You're like, I'm angry. Well, we often don't want to send an email or have that conversation from that place of anger. You know, that might be a time to take a step back, draft the email, put it away, and then send it when you're feeling a little more calm. But that ability to check in with yourself can really help, establish better relationships with colleagues, or refocus on work when your mind's distracted. I'm worried about the situation in Afghanistan. Okay, allow for that, and then refocus back on work. So what we just did helps activate the stress response cycle, which is different from the stress reaction cycle. So mindfulness practices downregulate the sympathetic nervous system response and activate the parasympathetic nervous system response, the body's rest and digest process. We become aware of what we're experiencing. And this pause leads to an authentic experience of the present moment, as well as the ability to decide how to respond accordingly. Many times, this even has the added benefit of reducing the problems we're dealing with. So, for example, if we realize we're upset about a work situation or COVID-19 or some other current event, we can avoid taking it out on a loved one or try to actively refocus on work. And then this has the added benefit of facilitating more positive relationships and greater productivity. From this stress, we can develop a new awareness and develop a new relationship with stress that can allow for more choice in our response. So the term mindfulness gets thrown around a lot. So I think it's important to emphasize what mindfulness is and what it is not. Mindfulness is seeing clearly and being present with reality as it unfolds and as it is. It is focusing on the present and being aware of our present thoughts and actions in a non-judgmental way. They might be positive thoughts and actions, and they might be negative. It's important to bring awareness to them, again, so that we can make that response and that choice. So mindfulness is not pretending everything's okay. It's not being happy 100% of the time. It is not the absence of negative emotion, a stress-free existence, or the complete lack of thoughts. So even when we did that short meditation, you may have had many other thoughts. Maybe your mind was wandering the entire time. Even just noticing that is an act of mindfulness and can activate the parasympathetic nervous system response and can downregulate that fight or flight response. Even just noticing the mind wandering. It doesn't have to be perfectly calm or clear. It's also not denial. It's accepting things as they are and being able to meet the demands of the present moment. So what are some ways we can integrate mindfulness into our new normal? So one way, which we sort of did a version of during our activity together, is called the stop method. So it's kind of easy because you can remember it while you're activated. You can feel yourself getting upset or anxious or sad, whatever is happening, maybe even elated, whatever the experience is. So you stop what you're doing. Press the pause button on your thoughts and actions. So no more action, no more movement. Take a pause. Take a few breaths or even just notice the breath. Bring the attention to the breath to center yourself and bring yourself fully into the present moment. Sometimes people take a pause and ground in the body. So a lot of times people, if the breath is kind of hard to focus on for you, you can notice the physical sensations. You know, perhaps you can feel agitated. You can feel your blood pressure rising. You can feel sweaty. Those things are all symptoms of the sympathetic nervous system response that can actually be an opportunity to ground in the present moment. Being aware of sweaty palms, being aware of heart racing. Paradoxically, bringing that attention can frequently start the downregulation process. Observe these thoughts, emotions, and body sensations. What physical sensations are you aware of? You know, bottom in the chair, feet on the ground, anything to help ground in the present moment. What are you feeling right now? What thoughts are going through your mind? What is the story you're telling yourself about your experience and why it's happening? And then after you've done this stop process, proceed with whatever you were doing, making a conscious, intentional choice to incorporate what you've just learned. You know, now's not the right time to send that email. Now's not the right time to be reading about this current event or checking the news. Right now is the time to be refocused on work. Right now is the time to be helping my child with their homework. You know, so whatever that moment arises. Perhaps right now is the time to be relaxing, right? Kids are in bed, dinner's made, you have a few minutes by yourself or with a loved one, you know, now's the time to enjoy that time of peace. Many people enjoy using apps, so Calm, Insight Timer, or Headspace. You can do what's called a body scan meditation in your home, car, or office that's focusing on various body parts as the object of meditation. And there's many, if you just Google body scan, you'll find many available for free online on YouTube or many websites. You can take a sense and savor walk on a lunch break. So this is going on a walk not for an activity or for exercise, but to just simply use what's around you as the object of meditation. Notice the cars, notice the gravel, notice the trees. It could be something beautiful. It could be something, ordinary, like a building. So whatever you're seeing, and that can actually be a form of meditation that can be grounding for people. You can bring awareness to small daily activities. These kind of activities could include brushing your teeth, doing the dishes, even commuting. There's been scientific research that even bringing awareness to things that might seem boring or kind of not enjoyable, like commuting, actually increases your happiness while you're doing them. So it's actually, on average, better to pay attention to what you're doing, even if it's a task that doesn't seem very pleasurable. And that tends to increase happiness, somewhat paradoxically. And no, every time you come back to a meditation or a practice in general, that's a moment of mindfulness. You notice you haven't done any mindfulness in weeks, come back to it, now you're back in it. You could join an MBSR class. So Mindfulness-based stress reduction was a program developed by John Kabat-Zinn out of the University of Massachusetts Amherst. And it was initially applied to patients with chronic pain and cancer who are truly at the end of the road for options on how to reduce suffering. NBSR can be done in a group setting. It's done 9 sessions over 2 months. You meet once a week and have a one-day mini retreat during week 7, and it incorporates a variety of practices. So body scans, meditation, gentle yoga, and homework activities such as documenting pleasant and unpleasant experiences. Where can you find these programs? Well, just a plug, I'm not really affiliated with the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute, but I have taken some great courses there, and I would encourage anyone on this call who's interested in mindfulness to do so. They have some fantastic MBSR classes and some great trainers there. I've taken MBSR as well as a mindful self-compassion course at Samueli. I really, really enjoyed it. They have a class right now. I just Googled it, looked at what they have coming up. They have an Awakening in Nature, Mindful Parenting in the Pandemic and Beyond, and a Mindful Self-Compassion short course. So I know they offer discounts for staff and faculty. So I definitely encourage people to check that out. And then also explore what works for you. So there's this kind of thought that mindfulness is has to be sitting in a lotus position or doing yoga like some very fit 30-year-old yoga instructor. Well, that could be mindfulness, right? And there's many other ways to practice mindfulness as well. And who knows, someone could be doing yoga and, completely checked out the entire time. So there's many different ways to practice mindfulness. So, one idea that I always think is a little bit paradoxical is something like eat some ice cream mindfully. So it's not what we're doing as much as the way that we're doing it, right? So you're stressed out, you need a treat, standing in the kitchen, eating an entire pint of Ben and Jerry's and feeling guilty about it the entire time, telling yourself you should stop is not mindfulness. But perhaps you think, I had a really rough day and I need a treat. I'm going to take my kid, my spouse, my friend. We're going to go get ice cream at my favorite ice cream shop. I am going to get my favorite flavor, enjoy every single bite, enjoy my time with my friend or by myself or whatever, and just really savor it. And that ice cream is now mindful. That's a mindfulness practice. Call a friend if you need social support. Be present with what they need from you. And oftentimes you can even use your conversation with your friend as an object of meditation. Spend time in nature if that's something you enjoy. Watch a movie with your friends or family, or even binge a Netflix show. Maybe you check in with yourself and you're like, I have been working so much. I am burnt out. I am overwhelmed. I need a few hours to check out. And I'm going to give myself this gift of watching my favorite show for a few hours without guilt. Then you can turn it off, go to bed, and wake up feeling refreshed. So in conclusion, I want to circle back to using mindfulness to develop the capacity for peace, even during times of great difficulty. So this is some data from the COVID-19 study that I presented at the beginning of the talk. So this is a word cloud that presents the open-ended responses that were provided to us when we asked Americans to write down any positive benefits they experienced as the result of the pandemic. So people wrote they had friends, time, family, learned, God, projects, home, realized. So they found these positive benefits even during this time of great difficulty. And additional analyses indicated that finding positive benefits did not negate the negative aspects of the experience. But it did highlight that challenges and peace can coexist, which I think is critical for us to acknowledge moving forward. If we're able to bring awareness to the present moment, we might better be able to see the silver linings and experience peace, even during times of great difficulty, even if this does not necessarily mitigate the clouds. All right, so that concludes my talk. I presented a number of research from University of California, Irvine. So I want to thank my colleagues, my funders of my project on mindfulness, National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities, National Science Foundation that funded the COVID research, and then my teachers at the UCSD Center for Mindfulness and the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Institute. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dana. That was really great. I loved how you gave us some really practical tips on how to, impact our lives and how to use mindfulness. A couple of questions we have. One is there's different types of mindfulness, and if I hark back to my own early life experiences, I remember hearing something about transcendental meditation. How is meditation and how is TM different than mindfulness, or is it similar?
So TM is a practice to cultivate mindfulness, right? So mindfulness is paying attention to the present moment as it unfolds. And there's many different ways you can do that, right? So you could take a mindfulness-based stress reduction course. You could take a course in transcendental meditation. You could do a sense and savor walk. You could do a mindful eating exercise with your ice cream or whatever. So those are all just practices that increase the capacity of mindfulness. So that's why I really think there's not a one size fits all approach. There can be many things that work for different people. I mean, we do a lot of mindfulness-based stress reduction because there's a lot of scientific evidence for it. I mean, I have a MBSR study, but I almost think that, it's very specific. So it lends itself to science, so it's like, okay, we can do an empirical study on it in a randomized control trial because, it's X, Y, and Z, and it really fits those boxes. But, I think out in the real world, I mean, there's lots of things that people can find helpful. So, if you try one thing and it's not for you, I would suggest exploring a different practice.
Got it. And then, and by the way, I want to ask the audience, encourage the audience to submit any questions you may have as well. You mentioned about the media impact, and you mentioned about other impacts on individuals, if you would stress, I think you said stress response. So what about people who've actually had personal experience with COVID-19 infection, either themselves or their family members, and maybe even have had deaths? Did any of your study or survey reveal any specific impacts of those experiences?
Yeah, so those the research that we've done so far, it's really indicated that both of those things can unfortunately all be distressing for people. So media exposure is distressing, as well as that individual level experience of being sick or knowing someone who is sick. Certainly we have found that that's a extremely robust predictor of distress. So I think that those things, can coexist. And certainly when people are having more of those things happen, it tends to portend more distress. So it's kind of a confluence of stressors. I think that's one thing that was really unique about COVID-19 was it was like an acute event, and it was kind of happening in these big events it's a stay at home, or you got sick, or, someone who got sick, and those were these kind of personal traumas. And then it was kind of this chronic stressor, and all these other things were happening. So, it was really not to overuse the word unprecedented, but, it really was this unprecedented stressor, and that it was happening at so many different levels for people at the same time.
Right. We have a great question here from the audience, one of the audience members. And this is a sort of a big question as they phrased it, but how do you take the emotions out of making decisions, right? So, whether you have to step back, or how do you recommend that you would take the emotions out of a big decision?
Yeah, well, I think it depends what decision you're making. Sometimes our emotions can give us really useful information, right? So, if you did the practice, kind of like that little practice we did where you're kind of checking in with your emotions, I mean, maybe you notice a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, maybe you notice hope, excitement. So your intuition and your emotion can certainly guide you. I think it's bringing it back to that awareness of what's happening. So like if you're able to check in with yourself, that can help guide you. Like our emotions are powerful emotions. Like I like this, I don't like this. And that can tell you, that can actually help your decision making process. So it's not that we just want to not have any emotions and just be 100% logical and rational all the time, right? We just want to kind of be aware of that and make the choice at how to proceed. So, I always kind of tell my students and myself, it's like, it's really hard to undo things. It's really easy to do things later, right? So it's kind of back to that stop method. Like if you're unsure, you can always take a step back, check in with yourself, and then move forward.
That's great advice. Sort of sleep on it, right?
I always think so. Yeah.
Great advice. There's a question that may not be answerable by you, Dana. Maybe Michelle can even comment, and I'll make a comment. But the question is, will mindfulness and other types of meditation be taught to UCI undergraduate or graduate students? Or are there specific courses those students can take? This person said we had one at San Francisco State University. It was very popular. So I know, obviously, we have the available opportunities at the Samueli Institute, and I know that also there is some availability at the ARC, for example. I don't know what the current schedule is at the ARC, but I know there are those available options. I don't know if Michelle has any other information.
I for staff and for faculty and residents, we certainly offer a wealth of resources for wellness, including mindfulness. Again, just like you said, Dr. Stamos, either through the Susan Samueli Integrative Health Center or through our HR wellness resources. So as far as for students, undergraduate or graduate, obviously that would be up to their respective schools and the curriculum. But certainly for staff, faculty and residents, I think we do offer a number of resources that, and I think Diane put those in the chat, or you can always contact Human Resources and we can get you connected with those resources.
Another great question. I manage a large team that supports staff on campus, and I think mindfulness would be very helpful to them to deal with stress from supporting staff as they return to work. So in the return to work, obviously, theme. I meditate and practice mindfulness daily, but I'm not sure how to introduce this to my team. Any suggestions on how I can introduce mindfulness to them as they return or as they prepare to help other people return from work?
That's a great question. I have a couple thoughts on that. First of all, I would do it during, if you can, do it during a time that's already work time, so it doesn't feel like something extra people have to do, and I would invite rather than require. Right. So, invite people to join you if they're interested rather than saying, all right, team, we're going to have our meeting and we're going to begin it, like forcing them to. I mean, you could always take you could always start a meeting with a short mindfulness practice. But again, invite rather than require, because sometimes if people feel forced to do something like that, it can create a lot of reactance anyways. People sometimes when they're starting to meditate, they feel like a lot of anxiety or like their mind's wandering a lot. They feel like they're not doing it right, which of course, being aware of your mind wandering and anxiety is, exactly the point. So, I would just, seek out some expertise. I'm happy to talk with you more offline about, kind of how to present that in a way that's inclusive and inviting and, rather than kind of just another task or creating reactance. So.
Great. And then another great question. This one hits home for me because I am the parent of a teen. Any recommendation for encouraging a teen who's struggling to try a mindfulness practice, especially when they're in the stage where everything a parent does is stupid and they know everything? That kind of defines teenagehood, I think. But thank you.
Yeah, I think almost it was my answer is like a little bit the same for when I was thinking about employees. Like anytime you can invite rather than require or demand or instruct, I mean, it's kind of good, just in general, and especially with mindfulness, because the mind has such reactance to it anyway, right? Like our minds are amazing. They think, they plan, they dream, so the nature of the mind is to wander, right? So even if you're super into meditation and you're like, this is for me, I want to do this and all that, even then, mindfulness practices can be very difficult. There's a natural reactance to that just based on our biology and evolution. So, with a teenager, perhaps you could sneak some in, like a family sense and savor walk, or, some of those activities that they might enjoy, or maybe, highlight your experience of it, like, oh, this, let's look at this tree, or, something like that, that's more welcoming and inviting, rather than, okay, after dinner, we're going to do like a family meditation, because that can just kind of create more of that reactance.
Great advice. Well, I want to thank you again, Dana, for a fantastic session. And I want to thank Michelle Quinton and the HR team for bringing these forward for all of us, quite frankly. I'm personally grateful, and also I want to express gratitude on behalf of the entire UCI Health enterprise. So thank you so much. It's been a great session.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you, Dr. Stamos, for being our host today. We just want to remind you that this is a continuing webinar series, and our next webinar is in 2 weeks on Tuesday, September 14th. And so we invite you to join us again live for these webinars, but if you miss them, they are being recorded and you can view them at the website link that Diane has posted in the chat. So thank you to Dana and Dr. Stamos again for joining us, and we hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.